Welcome back to Red Cedar Radar. I am joined today by Ross Binder from Go Iowa Awesome, which is the Iowa's version of Spartans Illustrated through Rivals.com. Welcome, Ross. So happy to have you. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we get to talking about football, give me a little rundown about what you do for your site at Go Iowa and kind of your relationship with Iowa football.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. I am the managing editor over at Go Iowa Awesome, which is, like you said, that's the Iowa site on the Rivals Network here. We took over in January, but prior to that, we were an independent blog, and I've been writing with them since we started there back in 2015, no, 2016. But I also was writing for our predecessor, which was Blackheart Gold Pants, which is a blog on the SB Nation network now. So yeah, I've been writing about Iowa sports for 13-ish years now, I think. Um, so yeah, I enjoy it. I'm happy to be here at Rivals now, and it's a lot of fun. I think definitely one of the better parts about the football season is just kind of getting to know some of the other sites, Big Ten sites around the network better. So happy to
Yeah.
happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. A very similar transition to Rivals as some of us from Spartans Illustrated, coming over from SB Nation and all of that. So, um,
Yep.
yeah, an interesting parallel.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk Penn State. So I
Oh
watched a little bit of
no.
the game on TV. I know we're getting into it right away.
Yep.
I watched a little bit of it on TV. Iowa, unfortunately, lost 31-0 to Penn State. Talk to me about what went wrong and what needs to be cleaned up before their matchup against Michigan State.
Sure. Well, I could give you the really short answer for this one, which is everything went wrong. I mean, the only thing that was successful for Iowa in that game was the punting. Tory Taylor, who is the preseason All Big Ten punter. He's been really good for the last couple years. He's also good again this year. He was excellent in that game. He had like 5 punts, averaging 50 yards. He had like 3 inside the 20, 2 inside like the 5-yard line practically. He was great. There was absolutely nothing else that Iowa did in that game that was even decent. Like the offense, we're going to talk about them in a little bit, I know, and they were just atrocious. 0 points. What was it? 76 yards total, I think. It was really horrendous. The defense held up well for a half. It was 10-0 at halftime. Still pretty much in the game at that point. But you could see some warning signs because in that first half, and it became a trend for the whole game, but in the first half, like Penn State was on the field a long time. Like I think they had at least doubled Iowa's time of possession and plays run in the first half, if not close to tripled at that point. So it was like the defense has been out there a long time. They're going to start wearing down if something doesn't change in the second half. Nothing changed. And sure enough, the defense just could not get any stops in the second half. Like Penn State just very patiently, very methodically just drove down the field, got some more touchdowns, and then the game was out of reach. And then Iowa started turning the ball over on offense, and that gave Penn State short fields, and then it just snowballed into a really, that ugly 31-0 final is what you get after all that. So yeah, that's kind of the rundown of what happened. It's pretty miserable 3.5 hours, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine, and I can relate a little bit based off MSU's prior performances recently, but um, are there any, like, other than just playing better in general, are there any key pieces that you think they can turn around in time for the game this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the improvement is going to have to come on the offensive side, in terms of the offensive line is going to need to block better, and I think they can. They've showed a few signs of that earlier in the season. I think right now we're just going to try and hopefully chalk up a lot of last week to Penn State is just really good. So maybe that was the biggest issue they had. But if the offensive line can give McNamara some better time in the pocket and open up some holes for the running game, then at least they can stay on the field longer, sustain a few drives, and you know hopefully score some points. Obviously, but I think that is going to be the biggest difference. Is the offensive line just has got to play better, and they can, but they're really going to need to step it up.
Okay. Speaking of Cade McNamara, that was going to be my next point. So he had a knee injury in preseason. Is that right? Preseason?
He had a I think it was officially a quad injury in
Okay. Okay.
yeah, and then in training camp back in August. It was about I think we were about halfway through training camp. First couple weeks in, everything's going great, and then he comes up. He just kind of took off with the ball, running it, and he came up kind of gimpy, went down,
Hmm.
and he's been dealing with that ever since. He says physically his health is has been getting a lot better. Like last week was one of his better weeks of practice. He said again after the game, and again this week in practice. My health is good. So I have to believe him, and I hope that translates into some better performances. The last couple of weeks haven't been very good for him. They beat Western Michigan 2 weeks ago. He didn't have a great game. Like I said, nobody had a good game on offense last week. He wasn't awful, but he just didn't have much time to do anything. Didn't His receivers weren't open, so pretty limited in what he could do. But yeah, I think that is a pretty big question mark. Is what does his health look like, and how effective can he be?
Yeah, absolutely. Other names to watch on Iowa's offense. I mean, we know Cade. We've seen him before in Spartan Stadium.
Yep.
Um, any other guys that Michigan State fans should keep an eye on Saturday?
Yeah, that's a great question because the offense is kind of in flux a little bit the last few weeks. Our best offensive weapon so far this season has been a tight end, Luke Lachey. He was leading the team in receiving yards and catches through the first like 3 weeks or so. Unfortunately, he had what looks like a season-ending injury in that Western Michigan game, so he will be out this weekend and probably the rest of the fall. It sounds like. And then I was also been down a couple running backs the last couple weeks. Caleb Johnson, who had a really great freshman year last year. He was Iowa's leading rusher. He looked really good. He's been dealing with. They've kind of been cagey about what his exact injury is, but it sounds like it's kind of an ankle, like high ankle sprain maybe. So he is out. And then Jazz Patterson, who is a redshirt freshman, who was started to play a couple weeks ago. He's had some good performances. He also is dealing with sounds like another ankle injury, so he is unlikely to play tomorrow. It sounds like, or on Saturday. And so Iowa's top running back right now is LaShawn Williams. He was probably number 3 on the depth chart like 3 weeks ago. He had a great game against Western Michigan. He had like 150 yards or so. Looked really good, strong running, hitting the hole well. Didn't look good last week. Again, nobody on offense looked good. But outside of him, the running game is got some question marks. And then in terms of who Cade's throwing to now, Eric All, who is another name that Spartan fans probably remember because he was Michigan's tight end for a couple years. So he came over with McNamara in the offseason. He's definitely the number 1 tight end now. So he will, I would guess, probably be the most targeted option on Saturday. And then in terms of receivers, they're really trying to get the receivers more involved. It's been a struggle this season. They don't have many catches, not many yards, not a lot of touchdowns. Just been a real struggle. Nico Regaini he's like the super senior old man of the squad. I think it's his 6th year. He's a possession guy. He'll definitely be an option on a lot of plays. Deontay Vines is a junior. I think he's leading Iowa's receivers in touchdowns. Him and Seth Anderson, I think, probably are tied with a couple. And so Anderson's more of a deep threat. Vines is more of a kind of in between routes. And then they have Caleb Brown, who is an Ohio State transfer. They're really excited about him in the offseason. So far, he has not been able to do much uh, during the season. It's unclear what the hangups are there, but he's got a lot of speed and a lot of talent, but hasn't been able to fully, make that happen in the Iowa offense yet. So we'll see. There's a lot of heat, a lot of pressure on the offense to perform after what happened last week. So and a lot of it is, I'm sure, is self motivated. They've got to be pretty upset about the way they played against Penn State, so they should be pretty eager to show that that was a fluke or not who they truly are.
Yeah, absolutely. Switching to defense now, you kind of touched on this already, just that Penn State is a great team. They have a great quarterback. What did Penn State do right against Iowa's defense? I know you kind of mentioned, but maybe recap a little bit before we go into names to mention.
Yeah, for sure. I would say the big strength of their defense was, especially after the first drive or two, they really seemed to have what Iowa wanted to do on offense, especially the offensive line, figured out. And they were just, the pass rush was getting by Iowa's linemen with ease. They were getting a lot of pressure on McNamara. And then they were also able to just stop up the running game. Like, there were just no holes whatsoever. So, they really controlled that line of scrimmage very effectively. And that, was, once they did that, like, everything else just kind of fell into place. Like, their coverage was strong too, but they didn't have to cover that long when they were getting that much pressure on the quarterback. And in terms of the running game, when Iowa didn't have success on early downs, that led to a lot of second and long, third and long, and those are obvious passing downs. And yeah, Iowa didn't do well there. I would say that is probably one of the big areas to watch in the game on Saturday is in terms of Iowa's offense and Michigan State's defense is if Michigan State's effective at stopping Iowa on first down and forcing Iowa into those second and long, third and long situations, no offense is good in that, but the Iowa offense is truly, truly terrible if they get off schedule and they don't have those medium distance or short distance downs to try and convert. And so if Michigan State can, get Iowa in those big holes, they should have, a pretty solid amount of success on defense, I would imagine, because Iowa has not shown an ability to do much in third and long at all this season.
Anything else to mention about Iowa's offense before we switch to defense?
Not a whole lot. Like, I mean, we covered the main players on offense. Like I said, I think the big thing is just, can they? Obviously, I think they're going to be fired up to play night game. Want to erase the bad taste from last week, and can they convert that? That they shouldn't. Motivation shouldn't be an issue, but can they convert motivation into execution and actual performance? Like that is the big question. And I think Iowa fans are very eager to see what the answer is to that question.
I think that's a good point, maybe for both teams in this matchup. That has been something that I've noticed with Michigan State's team after hearing the players speak and seeing how they had a little bit of a you know uptick in momentum after the Washington game when they played Maryland. The motivation is there, although there's other things going on. It's just switching it over to that execution, and I think that's a perfect way to sum it up. Okay, let's switch over to Iowa's defense. So, any specific names to watch on Iowa's defense?
Yeah, Iowa had a couple big defensive guys that were taken in the NFL draft last year, so they've been working on replacing those guys. Jack Campbell, who Michigan State fans might cheer for now that he's with the Lions. He was a big loss at middle linebacker, and they've got Jay Higgins replacing him. He's actually played really well. He's not to the level that Campbell was, but Campbell was a extraordinary middle linebacker. But Campbell's been very good leader, getting guys in the right positions and really tackling well this season. And then Cooper DeJean is another big name to know. He's in the cornerback. He had a great season last year. He had 5 interceptions. He actually returned 3 for touchdowns, which is just crazy. He's still looking for his first interception this year. He has not recorded one. It would be nice if it came on Saturday, frankly, but we'll see. Partly he hasn't recorded one. Teams have been kind of throwing away from him. They've been kind of targeting whoever his teammate is at the other cornerback spot. It was Deshaun Lee for a couple of weeks. It's been Jamari Harris the last couple of weeks. Harris was out he missed all of last season with injuries. He missed the first game or two this season with some suspension, but he's back. He's a really talented guy. I think he's kind of getting his feet back under him. So hopefully the secondary can make a few more big plays, and then up front, they've really been struggling to replace Lucas Van Ness. Was a really good lineman for them last season. He's off in the NFL. And then Noah Shannon was a guy they were really counting on to be a leader and a big player at defensive tackle. Unfortunately, he was suspended for the whole season right before the year began because of a gambling investigation here in Iowa. And so he is out. But Joe Evans he's another super senior, 6-year guy, defensive end. He's been solid. And then some of the D tackles, Yaya Black and Aaron Graves, are guys who are kind of trending up, but they're still kind of younger guys, so they're not quite fully acclimated to Big Ten play, I think. But
Yeah. So, what will Iowa's defense have to do against Michigan State's offense? Have you dug into that at all?
yeah, I was looking at the stats a little bit, and it looks like Michigan State hasn't run the ball very well this season so far. Been a better passing team. They do have some explosive weapons in the passing game, it looks like. So I think what I was going to try to do is probably similar to what they do in almost every game, which is try to limit big plays, prevent any explosive plays, and then really try and slow down the running game and probably try and make Michigan State one-dimensional. This season, Iowa has been really struggling to get sacks and force turnovers. They are near the bottom of the conference in both. Definitely sacks and turnovers. I think they forced 3, or 3 interceptions. So that I haven't looked at the conference stats for that one this week, but obviously not very high on the list. So I think a key for them is going to be, can they get to the quarterback for Michigan State? Can they get some pressure on him? Hopefully get a few sacks. And then if they are able to pressure him, can they maybe force some bad passes, some hurried passes, bad decisions, that maybe the secondary or the linebackers can get some turnovers. So I think that will be some of their big focal points on defense this week.
Do you have a prediction for the matchup on Saturday? Are you leaning one way or the other for Iowa?
Yeah, I am. I've been leaning Iowa all week. That was a really terrible game last Saturday, but I do think they're better than what they showed there. They're back at home, which is going to help. And they're facing a team that Michigan State, they are certainly in a bit of turmoil right now. Not the most focused, or everything's not going great over there either. So that probably will help Iowa a little bit. And so I think Iowa bounces back. In terms of a score prediction, boy, it's tough for me to predict the offense to score too many points. So, I'm thinking somewhere like 21-20, Iowa 21-23, Michigan State around like 10-14, something like that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's where I'd
I
land.
think it. Yeah, I think it's going to be a big test for Michigan State to go on the road right now. So I will also be very curious. So moving on from the MSU game, do you just have a season outlook overall for Iowa based off what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that honestly, overall, I think Iowa is pretty close to where we figured they would be at this point in the season. I think before the season started, if you looked at the schedule, most people probably had, Iowa penciled in for about 3-1 through 4 games. The non-conference games were eminently winnable. They won them all. I think most people expected them to struggle, and probably lose to Penn State in Happy Valley. They did. I would say though that even though the record might be what they expected, no one expected them to get just destroyed like they did in Happy Valley. So that is a little concerning, obviously. And then there was definitely an expectation, or at least a hope, that the offense would be improved from what it was last season. And so far, the results are very similar to what we had last season, what we saw last season. So, I think that does kind of temper expectations. That said, this is still the last year of the Big Ten West. So we get to play all those other teams in there for one more season. Iowa does not face Ohio State, does not face Michigan, does not even face Maryland, who looks like a pretty solid East outfit. So the schedule is advantageous for them, and no one else in the West looks like they're really going to run away with things. So before the season, we thought Iowa would be a West contender. I don't think anything has changed on that front, even after what happened against Penn State. They're still right in the mix there. So I think the next few weeks will be critical, though. They've got Michigan State this week, Purdue next week, and then Wisconsin and Minnesota, who are probably two of the bigger contenders in the West. So, if they come through that stretch with still a good record, if they're, at least 6-2 or so overall, I would say they'll be, November, they'll be right in the middle of the hunt for the West Division. And that's kind of, where they want it to be. And then it's, if they are able to win the West, it's going to, then the question becomes, can they actually do something against whoever they play from the East? Because those games haven't been very pretty lately. So we'll see. But first, they got to get to Indianapolis first, and they got 2 more months to get through for that to become an issue.
Yeah, lots of time till then. Who knows what will happen?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all my questions. Anything else that you want to mention about this matchup on Saturday?
Not too much. I mean, it is a night game. It's a 6:30 Central Time kickoff on NBC. Iowa's wearing all black uniforms, so should look pretty cool. And should just be a pretty good game, I think.
Yeah, I'm hoping so as well.
Yep.
So, like he said, the Spartans will face the Hawkeyes at 7:30 here, 6:30 there. On Saturday, you can watch it on NBC or stream it on Peacock. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to check out this video and our recap video that we'll have after the game. This podcast will be posted, like I said, YouTube or anywhere else that you listen to your podcasts. And I would recommend taking a look at Spartans Illustrated, considering a subscription. Even though football hasn't been going so well so far, basketball is coming soon, and maybe the football season can be turned around. So check out Spartans Illustrated for a subscription. There is a promo going on right now, and I will have that in the description of the episode, and I will have Ross's socials linked in the description as well if you want to give him a follow. Thanks so much for joining, Ross. I appreciate you very much. And I will see all of you in a recap video on Sunday. Bye.
All right.